Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Smart Home Collective. If you're new to the channel, welcome along, and please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and enjoy the episode. If you're a regular listener, regular viewer, I apologise. It's been close to 6 months since the last episode. Shit happens, life. I was enjoying life, but we're finally back. And with this episode, I'm taking a little bit of a twist. Normally I would get those pompous, stuck-up YouTube influencers on. Well, taking a little bit of a different tack with this episode. I've got two fantastic guys who are real prominent members of the Twitter Smart Home community. They're everywhere. If you're involved with Home Assistant, involved with Smart Home, these two guys are in every thread. They're creeping about every conversation. So I thought it'd be worthwhile getting the two guys on, having a conversation, and actually wanting to know a little bit more about their smart home and their best purchases or worst purchases. So I'll hand over first to Alexey for a bit of an introduction. And Alexey, I'm going to just open your, I'm going to just share your Twitter bio, because it's always quite embarrassing seeing yourself and what you've posted on Twitter. All right, give me just a second, I'll bring this up. All right. There we go. So there's Alexey's fantastic face. A little bit more hair, I think, in the bio there. Alexey must have had a trim. So you've defined yourself as mildly obsessed with home automation and enthusiast from Odessa. So how did you ever get into the whole smart home thing? Sorry to interrupt you. And even more importantly, how did you get so involved in the community? Because you're involved in all the conversations. You seem to be kind of in it, and everybody knows who you are. So how did you get into it?
Well, I don't think everyone knows who I am, but well, initially I started by automating everything at work, everything I could, because I was bored of typing same email over and over again. I was bored of copy pasting stuff, and back in 2007 we bought a flat back in Odessa, and there was nothing. It was just concrete. There was no wall. There were no walls. We had to do all the wiring, and at some point someone proposed to us to go with KNX, which we decided to go ahead with, but I never actually used it as a smart home up until I discovered Home Assistant. Home Assistant and home automation was like the direct continuation of everything I'm doing at work.
No, that was how you get into it. And I'm actually just Googling quickly, KNX. What on earth is KNX?
Well, KNX, if it is like Zigbee, but it's wired. And I'll put it the other way. It is like Matter, what Matter is supposed to be, but it's wired, and it has been around since early 90s probably.
I call it the ring main of home automation. If you're remembering your old ring networks and things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, essentially, you have your relays back at your consumer unit, and instead of your switches, you have like smart panels or controllers or whatever you want to have there, with a signal cable, which is a bit like a twisted pair cable.
Okay.
So, and you can change your switch to anything, and you can program it to do anything you like. And a lot of manufacturers that do different stuff. So.
All right, okay. Yeah, that's a new one for me, thanks. And I've got to call out, because you called it back out to me when I mentioned it previously when we were chatting before the podcast. You do maintain a GitHub. And I use the word maintain very loosely. There's a GitHub here. What is going on with it?
Well, there is Tileboard, which is the front end to Home Assistant, which I started doing with my friend back in, I think it was 2018. I wanted to have something light which would run on all the tablets and something I could modify in whatever, to look the way I wanted it to look, and to run any custom JavaScript. So it is slowly dying because I don't have any time to maintain it. There are a couple of guys who tried keeping it alive for a few years, but
Well, I'm going to flog the hell of it now, so that to try and put the pressure on you to maintain it.
yeah, well, there is hardly any need to maintain it.
Okay.
Because Lovelace is catching up, and although you cannot run complex visualizations with Lovelace on all the devices, it is still capable.
Yep. Okay. Brilliant. Well, welcome, and James, I'm going to move over to you. Let me just ping up your bio. There we go. And I love that. I mean, this is a fantastic bio. Father to a beautiful girl, Microsoft consultant, Power Platform by day, IoT inventor, hacker, super nerd by night, home assistant, ESP home chef, F1 chef. Wow.
Drop the chef there, right?
And if anybody doesn't follow Alexey or James, you need to get into Twitter, and I'll drop a link in the YouTube channel for you to follow him. But James, some of the stuff you post is fantastic. At one end of the spectrum, it's some of the creations. Other end of the spectrum, it's cooking and fantastic food pics. So it's a wealth of beautiful pictures at times.
I try and keep my followers entertained. That's for sure. It's a place of all of my hobbies. I think Twitter. I try and share everything I'm up to. Less of my work, more so these days. But those important stories here and there, I try and keep pushing out to interested people. But I've probably been tweeting away for it's there, isn't it? Since 2008, crikey. With all my hobbies, back in the day, I was in St John Ambulance in the cycle response unit, through to joining Microsoft and the life and soul of being a consultant. But more so these days, it's all my projects and crazy ideas that I bring to life. A big part of my work is storytelling to customers and bringing ideas to life. Mm-hmm. So I use some of those skills that I apply in my work outside and try and tell some stories along with what I'm doing and get people interested, right? Home Assistant's a fantastic project. And it's so accessible to so many people. Same with ESP Home, that I love giving people those little nuggets of ideas to break into that space.
Yeah, because you're not a kind of contributor to conversation. You're actually a contributor to content. A lot of people kind of, I would say, almost reach out at times because you've got a wealth of knowledge of the whole tinkering side.
Yeah, I love the makerspace. I've always been into electronics and electronic engineering for a long time, and I guess that a picture brings an idea to life. Historically, I've shared code in GitHub and gists, and like Alexey, I've got a repo myself, which I was maintaining at the start of my Home Assistant journey. Less so these days with life and family and moving and things. It's been really hard to keep that up to date. But I used to use issues to just track everything that I was doing on a given topic. When I built my weather station and stuff, it wasn't just about the rain and the wind and the speed of direction of the wind. It was about the air quality and a ton of other sensors that I wired in. And I just created issue after issue and just kept logging all my research and my notes. And I still have a private one that I keep notes in as well. But I do need to give that a bit of TLC and get some content back into it.
Brilliant. And you've got, let me just click on this as well. Let me get back to there. You've got a journal and a website. Now, has the journal superseded the website?
The journal's a bit of content curation, really. So all the stuff that I like and I bookmark in Twitter gets bundled up into Paper LI, and then it kind of on a weekly basis tries to create a bit of a I guess, a newsletter, if you like, of what I've interacted with. So it spans across my Microsoft work through to all the different hobbies and interests that I follow on Twitter.
Okay.
The blog is an ancient old thing. I started when I guess I kicked off my consulting career. Again, that used to see hundreds of articles, less so now, but bigger articles that I can dedicate a bit more time to. I tend to post here and share some of my journeys. I don't know how familiar you are with my air freshener, but that was a project that went viral very quickly, and a lot of people were interested in it. And I did a bit of a teardown around how I made it and shared some steps to make it through my log.
Yeah, again, and some of the stuff here is fantastic to read. Again, I'll post a link to both under the comment section. Great. Okay, so moving on then. So, James, I'll stick with you because I went with Alexey the first time. If you could summarize your smart home at the moment, how would you describe it?
How would I describe it? Crikey. I'd say it's there in the background, ticking along, doing its thing. It couldn't be better, right? Every release, Home Assistant brings out stronger, better, deeper integrations and fixes tons of stuff. Historically, the integrations are getting better. The components within the core are fantastic, and the team that Navikas is forming is just hands down.
And was it always Home Assistant, or did at some point in time you realised you needed to?
Yeah, when you asked this before we started recording, I kind of thought back around how I got into this space, and I think it was when I got my first home back in sort of 2015, 16. I wired up an Xbox and a projector, and I got a drop-down screen for it, and I had an AV switcher, and there was just a bundle of stuff there that was a real pain in the back to connect, turn on, switch the HDMI over, and I just thought there's got to be a simpler way. I bought myself a Harmony remote for my birthday that year, Raspberry Pi, and I just got to it, and I hacked my way through some Python, emitting the radio frequency for my projector blind. And then I used an activity on my Harmony remote to say, right, game time or movie time. The projector would boot up, the screen would drop down, the AV switch would move over. And I think it was at that point where the fact that I'd done something through software that interacted in my world, in my space, it was one of those light bulb moments. For me, I write software all over the place, and there's nothing finer than having software interact with me and my world and my space. And we can build websites and all kinds of tools and solutions that exist in the digital world, but in the evening when it gets to dusk, the blinds close in your house, and that level of impact for me is just monumental. And I've seen technology change like the two of you, but I just think it's phenomenal that think what my daughter will see in her lifetime, the change that she'll go through, and I'm just great to be doing my thing along the way. But I think after building that Raspberry Pi solution, I hacked around with some electronics. So I got my first Sonos speaker. I was really bummed that it was wired. I wanted a portable speaker back then to move around because I only had the one. I hadn't embraced the whole multi-room speaker system then. So I opened it up and dropped the battery back on the back of it. And then I then had a portable Sonos speaker, which was pretty neat. And here we are in 2022, and we've got the Sonos Move and stuff, and that progress alone, right? And then I think I got into the world of Hue, which has probably been a very expensive move since, but I wired up some strip lights in the kitchen, and then one thing led to another, and a few years later.
I think a lot of people start with Hue, and I think, give Hue its due. It's very accessible. It's expensive. Yep. It's accessible. For the most part, it works. I think some people give it a bad rap, and some people love it. It's a very chalk and cheese, depending what camp you're in. But Hue was what I got started in. Yeah. At the time, it was very much the wife looked at the price of bulbs and thought, "Yeah, not a chance." But you would buy one every couple of months, and this is ridiculous. Buying a bulb every couple of months to build a smart home. It's easier now, but that's what it was.
Yeah. I don't think for me back then, it wasn't so much about the automation and the smartness. I think it was just having fun, trying stuff out, and the huge thing led to another. And suddenly my daughter was getting light bulbs in a nursery, and we were dealing with sleep issues and stuff. And I was able to create some routines to solve that problem. But I when Florence was much younger, I really suffered with, I guess, maybe not so much lack of sleep, but just baby brain. I'd forget the most basic of things. And, leaving a bath running, it was a common problem. And the bath in this particular house couldn't deal with the volume of water entering the bath. It couldn't deal with, the overflow sufficient to drain it. And I'd always overflow the bath and then suddenly look up in the kitchen and there's a damp patch appearing. And for me, that was where I hacked, a sandwich container together with a Raspberry Pi and a battery pack, and I used an ultrasonic sensor to measure the bath water. It was the dirtiest, hackiest solution, but it worked, right? I'd get a ping or a notification somewhere, and it would solve the problem. And I eventually stumbled across OpenHab and moved sort of the stuff that I had that was possible to integrate back then into OpenHab. I liked the concept of the areas and the zones and things that OpenHab delivered, but sort of Home Assistant was years ahead at that point, and I did make the decision to move probably 2018 over to Home Assistant. Started out in the usual fashion, Raspberry Pi, burnt the Raspberry Pi out pretty quickly. I've got an Intel NUC, a Hayes Canyon. It's a really powerful Intel NUC, and I've got 64 gig of RAM in that, and I threw Proxmox on that initially to host Home Assistant in a container in Docker, and I've finally settled on Unraid running on that, and tons and tons of containers that I host on that server.
I'll go back to your OpenHead comment on that. For the viewers, I've put OpenHab on the screen. And before we started recording, me and Alexa were chatting about how we started. And I went from Hue and Alexa thinking, how do I bring this all together? And OpenHab was the first thing I ventured into. I really struggled with it. And I didn't find it that accessible. And it was almost to the point of it almost put me off venturing to open source. And then as a Home Assistant, it became easier. How far down the line with OpenHab did you go before you realised, yeah, I kind of want to go down the Home Assistant route?
I think quite far. I had, again, driven through a house move. I thought, I'll try and get into this properly. Zones, I forget the definition that they have with it back then, but I remember having to create tons of config files, and there was inheritance and relationships between the two, and I couldn't get it working as quickly as you'd want to in that space. Don't get me wrong though, when I first started out on Home Assistant, there was a similar problem, but I just found that there was a lot more content out there for Home Assistant at the time.
Yep.
But in between, I've had some alternative journeys as well. So I think I've used a Vera Hub for Z-Wave. So I started trying to mess around with getting Z-Wave sensors all around the house, and this particular house was sort of 1 meter thick stone, so there was no way I was going to win that battle, and I gave up. I've also had a SmartThings hub in between, but I finally settled for me on Zigbee. I live and breathe my Combi 2 stick. That gets a lot of traffic. So I started off with the Combi using the Decons integration with Home Assistant, and then the ZHA integration came out, and the team that managed that do a fantastic job. And I know it's so hard keeping up with the device standards and new devices coming out and stuff, but I think the teams across the Zigbee integrations do a fantastic job at keeping up with that. So yeah, Combi 2 for me with mostly Zigbee devices, and then I guess lots of ESP nodes all around the house doing different things with ESP Home, WLED, ES Presence and stuff. Madhouse really.
Are you at the point where, and I get kind of the envious feeling your house is just running quite intelligently and smoothly in the background without noticing it?
I'd like to use the word intelligence. But it is, yeah. To be honest, it does exactly what I want, and there's a backlog of tasks that I one day will get round to doing. And every month, as the release notes come out for the new release of Home Assistant, I scan down it and see how I can improve my automations and stuff, because it's so hard if you don't try and maintain a little bit of code maintenance along the way. You fall behind quite quickly, and some of the stuff they're doing at the moment, last month's release was phenomenal. Things like the parallel actions and things.
I'll hold my hand up. I've not updated since February.
Okay. Well,
I'm nervous.
I take the risk and I run the beta a week or so before it's released, and sit down on my chair and take a deep breath when I hit restart.
Brilliant. Alexey, over to you. This is the same question. You kind of summarise of your home assistant, your smart home. We know the brains of its home assistant, but just give us an overview.
Yeah, well, a bit like James, I started looking at home automation platforms, and it was OpenHub versus Home Assistant. And to be frank, OpenHub had a much better KNX integration. While Home Assistant, there was something, but you couldn't integrate stuff like climate at all. You could only integrate some switches, but somehow I figured I'll stick with Home Assistant, and I'm glad I made that choice. Of course, my home, most of my smart things are KNX. So I have room controllers. It's one just at the door. It controls both the climate and the light. And because when we moved into the house, when we bought the house, there was nothing done in it since it was built in 1935. So we had to knock most of the walls down. So we had to do new pipes, new wiring. So we could start from scratch. And this is having the experience with KNX, we decided to.
I don't know how I've never heard of KNX before. I feel like I've been missing out on something.
It is very often used in Germany. It is most of the manufacturers are based in Germany. There is a company called Jung. There is a company called Merten.
Fair to say, it's up there with the Control 4-like systems, though, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Control 4 and there is another one called Loxone. They only like their hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas KNX is all sorts of manufacturers come together and they can make stuff. And
for the most part, is it normally kind of professional installs?
Yes, yeah. Well, and even the software to program this stuff, it costs something like $1,500. The license, like the USB stick, the USB license. So it is mostly for professionals.
Okay.
But that, of course, we try to fit in everything we knew we want. Like I've done miles of Ethernet cables, all around the house. I have 3 Cisco switches, which are making so much noise that it's impossible to sleep in the room above it, for no reason now, because most of the stuff is Wi-Fi. I think I only have just a bunch of wired devices. One other smart thing we decided to do is we decided not to have any radiators, and we went for underfloor heating with the zones in every room. Some rooms have even 2 zones, and it does make a lot of difference because my house is about the same size as my parents' house, and we are paying a bit less than 3 times less than my parents.
Wow. Is it? I'm guessing it's electric, not the hot water.
No, it is water. It is
the water one? Okay.
Yeah. Well, the electric one is, to me, is like a big kettle.
Okay.
kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
And with the zones and with the home assistant, you can maintain temperature in different rooms according to the presence. So you know that if the television is on and it has been on for at least 5 minutes, that means even without any motion sensors, someone is watching TV and you need to bring the temperature up to a certain level, and you can bring it down after someone leaves the room. So I have a bunch of automations. They keep breaking because my wife says, why is it so cold in this room?
Home automation's breaking? No, surely not.
The worst part was, I have all my heating and all my hot water and towel rails automated. I did mix up towel rails with hot water, and I had different schedules. And of course, the towel rails, in my mind, they had to come on at least half an hour after the hot water comes in, because you need to just, you're taking a shower, then you need to, you hang your towels, and you want them to become dry. So my wife was screaming and said, like, something is wrong with our boiler. The water is cold. And then at some point she said, well, wait a minute. The water was warm, half an hour after it had to be. Didn't you mix up towel rails with hot water? No, I could not have done it. And we lived like this for probably 2 months. Maybe it is the case.
And ever since, she's been doing unit tests on all your automations.
Well, she's a botanical artist, but she studied to be a mathematician, so she has a mind of a mathematician. So besides KNX, I have a bunch of Zigbee stuff. Well, it's mostly Akara motion sensors and window sensors. I have Cube, which everyone buys, but no one
One of
uses.
those pointless gadgets out there, but yeah.
Yeah, I've also recently bought this Symphonis controllers from IKEA.
Yep.
I was expecting them to be nice, but they are very flimsy, so I ended up not using them.
Because they look better than the IKEA had the one with the 4 buttons. They look.
I love those ones.
Yeah.
I find them really. I've got a couple dashed around the house for media player controllers, and I had some labels made to replace the brightness with volume and back and forwards and stuff.
And probably just like James, I started with Raspberry Pi, but because I had so many sensors, those SD cards have been dying, I think, 2-3 months. So I moved on to Docker. I had it running on Synology, but I wanted to have it separate. I wanted to have HasOS. I wanted to be able to install add-ons and have proper backups. So I moved to Intel NUC. It's running on a very old NUC, which my wife used since 2010, probably. But it's still running.
It does the job, yeah. Well, I'm running in the Odroid into, but I'm waiting on Amber arriving, and I don't know if Amber's going to be an upgrade or not.
Well, it's based off Raspberry Pi module.
Yeah.
So it just depends, how much processing power you need.
Yeah.
I know that I have outgrown Raspberry Pi quite a while ago because I have 18 cameras, and I'm also using Google Coral, and I need to do object detection, but it is using CPU quite a lot. So
yeah,
Raspberry Pi would never cut it.
I'm going to bring up a video. There was just when you brought up the wee IKEA button, there was a post on Twitter that cracked me up from Aaron at Make It Work. I'm going to pop it up because he was showing off his new IKEA, his old IKEA button, but it was the way he fondled the button. I found quite unnerving, and I did call him out on it. It was quite sensual. Let's just pop this up, see what you guys think. Right. There we go. Right, watch this. If this works. And Aaron, apologies for calling you out. Is that coming through? There you go. It's a one wee stroke. Is that coming through?
A little bit.
He's kind of just rolling this thing in his hands quite sensually. And I said, Aaron, that doesn't look right, mate. There's something wrong with the way you're fondling with a button. Anyway, off tangent. Right. Brilliant. So, good overview of your home's best ever purchase. And Alex, I'll stick with you. If you had to say, listen, hands down, best purchase, why?
I don't know if it qualifies to be a smart home thing. Probably does, but Roborock vacuum cleaners.
Absolutely.
Since I became a father, it got so difficult to clean the house, and we bought an S5 Max probably 2 years ago, and we've been moving it up and down the stairs because it does support multi-level houses, so you can have it on different floors, but you have to physically bring it up. So this year we bought an S7, which is it's a great upgrade. It has a vibrating mop, and it does a marvelous job.
Yeah, for me, I don't have a Roborock. I've got a Bugatti, I think 500, but the vacuum itself, just having a vacuum, it's life changing, and it's the one thing in our household that is just everybody's accepted it, and it just works, just does what you need to do. Yes, you still need to clean the floor 20% of the time, but 80% of the time, this thing just runs around, does it. It's great.
I'd be totally making a laundry chute where the Rumba could drive up to and then get upstairs to the next floor, and I'd be automating that.
Well, one nice thing I did with it, when my daughter is having her lunch, there's just stuff around her table everywhere. So I had a routine saying, I'm using Alisa, which is the Russian version of Alexa. So Alisa, clean around Maria. So the vacuum has a zone around her table, and it sort of quietly goes around, cleans up, and comes back.
So yeah, I'm just looking at this now. So it's got LiDAR. Does it have? So it's a mop and a vacuum.
Yeah. It's unlike the S5. It has a vibrating mop, so you have a water tank and a vibrating mop. So
okay. Yeah, that's one thing I wish mine had was LiDAR, just given that you can obviously map out zones, etc. We've just got I think it's got a gyroscope on it, so it maps the room eventually. It doesn't wander randomly, but it wanders randomly until it stops wandering randomly, if that makes sense. It maps the room out. But James, same question to you. Best ever purchase?
The Rumba is certainly on my shopping list once the renovation's all finished. I'm having to settle on a big shop vac to clear up my mess. Best ever purchase is a tough one, right? For me, torn between my Sonos speakers. I'm a big music lover, and through the day, moving around the house, Home Assistant has made those speakers so intelligent. I'll explain why in a little bit when we get onto the projects. But I think electric blinds, right? Venetian blinds, blackout blinds, privacy blinds. When we renovated this place, we did the whole house, right? And it's like that point with Hugh, right? One bulb, it doesn't make a difference to your life. One Sonos speaker doesn't make a difference to your life. But as soon as you start doing your whole living space with it, and all your bulbs are smart, and all the windows are suddenly opening and closing through the day. I think that's probably up there. And it's not just about the opening, right? It's being smart with them. So if the window's open, don't close the blind on me in the evening. Right, I need to shut that window. So it's having an intelligence to make it smart. And then if it's hot, the south-facing windows, if there's sufficient UV outside and the temperature's hot, the blinds close, right? Like they would do.
I'm feeling so inadequate right now sitting here. My house is thinking, fucking hell, this is brilliant.
It's what you do in continental Europe, right? You'd shut your shutters during the day when it's hot. But why not do it? It probably only happens once or twice a year for us in Manchester. But it's for me, it's being able to get something that is integrated with Home Assistant, but you can just add that next level of smarts to it. For me, so.
It's something I've always I've always wanted to do. The problem is we've got is upstairs you've got the blackout blinds with the wee bobbly cord, which is fine because it goes in the track for the most ones that come in the track. Downstairs it's the rope cords for Venetian wooden blinds, and I've struggled to find something that does the rope cord. Have you solved that problem?
I did my homework beforehand, and I ended up with Somfy blinds. So I found a supplier that gave us a good deal. Actually, there's one window left to do, and it's in the study that I'm in at the moment. And I'm very tempted. It's a bifold door, and I'm very tempted rather than putting a blind on it, doing the electronic frosting. I've found a supplier that will give me sufficient frosting, and when it's not powered, it's frosted, and when you power it, it's transparent.
Lovely.
A while back, somebody posted an integration. They hooked it up to a relay, like a Sonoff or something, and they were able to frost their front door glass. It was beautiful, and it's been in my backlog as a to do for a long time. So I'm probably going to get round to that next month and sort that last window out.
I'll need to check out those Somfy because it's something I really want to do. So yeah, okay, Somfy blinds. Okay. The opposite then, worst purchase, Alexey, and why?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say it's a purchase, but it was a decision. I'm also a huge music lover, so I decided to have a proper multi-room audio. So we have wired speakers in almost every room. I even have one in the master bathroom. But the actual platform that we used is called CassaTunes. So basically, it is Windows PC with two sound cards. And it's a 16-channel amplifier with a trigger cable. So the actual software is terrible. And about 3 years ago, it was doing updates, Windows updates during nighttime. So for some reason, it could start playing music like at 3 a.m. And you cannot do anything smart with it. Although I managed to, put together some kind of custom component to make it work with Home Assistant.
Yeah.
But if you want to do something like text to speech, or even play something, it is nearly impossible because first of all you need to wake up your amplifier, so you need to send a trigger signal. Then you need to wait 3 seconds for the amp to warm up and to be able to play something through the speaker. Then you need to send that MP3 to it, and then you need to turn the amp off. You need to be able to wait long enough to turn it off.
James, I think Alexa needs help here, mate. You need to.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah, help
like
her out.
I started right back with my projector, right, and the Xbox and the HDMI switch, and there's like 6 remotes involved to do it all, and no.
But the good thing is, Alexa on the website it integrates with KNX. There you
Yes,
go.
well, it does integrate with everything. It is very nice on paper, but the reality. Oh, besides that, we had a terrible problem with ground loop. So you can hear the hissing sound coming through every speaker. It was going on for quite a few years until I decided to investigate what it is and how we can solve it. So I bought a ground loop isolator for basically every input. There's like 8 of them. It's a complete mess in my rack, but it did solve the problem with the hissing sound. But because the software is so unmaintained and so unintuitive, we almost never use it.
I was going to say, is it still there and still being used?
Yeah, well, it mostly no. Sometimes when I have like a few minutes of free time, I can sit back in my office and I can listen to music, but it just happens once a month.
God, that's a bad big
shame.
purchase as well. I mean, normally worst purchases are small things, but that's a
24 hours a day, music is playing in this house, or the radio is on, or some kind of music is playing.
Wow.
I should have used Sonos, but I wanted to do it properly, but I just ended up overthinking
it. James, same question. Worst purchase?
I would probably say cloud-based security cameras back in when I first started out. So I went down the Ring route and I dropped almost, I guess, with 3 or 4 floodlights and the doorbell. It was like $1,000 on ring gear, and it did what it said it did. Right, it recorded, it gave me the alerts, it gave me everything I wanted, but it just didn't integrate with Home Assistant back then. This was pre the integration existed and stuff. And on slow connections, somebody rings your doorbell and you're waiting and you answer it and they're gone. So that's all gone. I've sold that and given my brother some of that. All for local. We love local. So I have a ton of unified cameras and network here now. So it's all local and backed up to the cloud through different means.
So Ring.
Oh, sorry. I think I have another worst purchase that could compete with my cassette tunes. Mobotics door entries.
Alexey, where are you getting these names from? I've not heard of KNX cassette tunes.
Well, it is a German brand. The hardware that they do is quite good.
Okay.
The software on paper is remarkable because on the actual door entry you can run your own zip server. You can
these are your gates, right? You've got your gates running on this, right? If I remember.
Yeah, but it can run its own zip server. It can run zip client. You can program it to do anything. The actual software is more convoluted than MikroTik's Router OS, but the actual app for the phone it is a nightmare. And first of all, it was written in Qt, and I don't think the person who wrote it, has ever even tried using it. And you need to open ports just to be able to connect it. And when the doorbell rings, you can wait, 40 seconds until it connects to you. So it's all nice on paper, but it is terrible, and it did cost quite a lot. And I I would like to change it, but it is working for now.
Let's start crowdfunding to redo Alexey's house, get rid of cassette tunes, get rid of mobile text.
Well, I made a lot of mistakes.
And there's James thinking he messed up with doing Ring, but crikey. Wow. Yeah, they're sizable bad purchases.
I've probably got as equal bad purchases, but I've thoroughly got rid of them and got them out of my mind since.
Well, I have 2 of those door entries, and it's it will be hard to change it to something else.
I feel like there's an ESP home project there.
Oh yes, we do love an ESP home project. Okay, next question then. Best DIY project. And James, I'll come to you first.
Tough one. I don't think there is a best, and they're all best in my mind. But I guess for me, the better ones are the ones that just exist now, and I don't even realise that they're there. With this house, we're on a corner of two roads, and it would feel like we're part of the road that goes around the corner, and we're not. We're on one of the other streets. So often we get confused with numbering and stuff. And one of the first things I did was put an illuminated number out the front, which was fun. I'll ping through a link and you can pull it up. I basically just found 2 solar panelled lights on Amazon and stripped the contents out and put some WLED lights inside, filled it with some epoxy, and things sat there working away perfectly. Had a lot of fun, lots of people commenting on it. Every delivery driver would thank you for it. And Quinn LED posted a video.
Quindor did something like that. Is it similar to what Quindor did?
Yeah, so he did one sort of 2 or 3 months afterwards and bought some really nice acrylic numbers off of AliExpress. Stripped the contents like I had done, but they're so much nicer in terms of the style of the numbering and stuff. So that sat there on the front of the house, and again with my storytelling, this is a perfect example of how I kind of created a bit of a thread, showing the progress and some of the ideas that I was having as I was building the solution out.
Yep.
But I finally settled with these acrylic numbers and the things connected with the help of my doorbell and my unified cameras. If somebody is detected on the front of the house, then a WLED effect turns on and draws their attention to the number. And then when you press the doorbell, usual loading circle flashes up on them. But the hue glow, what I've settled with now is these ones. The hue from the power, I think there's like 300 LEDs per meter on the new LEDs that I'm using, and the hue just punches on the brickwork so beautifully, and the effects are better because the LEDs go around the number. The WLED effects are really, really powerful. And if I got a couple of quid each time someone had commented on how nice these are, I'd probably get
I remember seeing this.
I could make 10 of these, right? Really, really powerful. And
They're
really nice.
really cool. Yeah, I remember seeing these, and it's around about the time when I started before or after the Quindor video, but that was something I thought I really, really would love to do.
Yeah. And it's also the other side of that brickwork is the electric box, right? So I just drilled through and you can't even see any wiring. And that's something I love, is not seeing wiring. I hate seeing project boxes and pins and dupont wires kicking around. I try and make a solution, right? And part of that is the product design from start to finish. But in terms of DIY projects, one of my popular ones been the air freshener. So as somebody who doesn't sleep particularly well, I'd hear we had these air fresheners around the house, and every 20 minutes or so you'd hear the tst, and it just drove me crazy when I was in bed trying to get to sleep. So I thought, well, there's got to be a smarter way, right? Firstly, I'm just wasting the fragrance inside those things. I know it's not very much, but still it's a waste, right? So I thought, right, I'm going to stick a relay in that, and I'm going to control it through an ESP board. And the ones around the house, they only operate when the room's in use, right? There's no point in spraying. So like Alexey with the TV on, and the room's in use. I've studied our house over many years and studied ourselves a little bit, and we all have routines and things, and through that you can start to think, right, the TV's in use, then the living room's in use. If my computer is on and my monitor is on, my workstation is on, so there's usually a good sign that I'm working. Through to if there's weight detected in the bed and somebody's in bed, they might be watching TVs, they might be resting, but through this you start to get that presence, and obviously it's a trigger for the air freshener to work. But the pièce de résistance was the toilet flush, right? So I stuck a contact sensor on the ball in the cistern in the toilet, and you'd press the toilet flusher and it would do 3 squirts in the air for you, and you can say to your voice assistant that it's stinky in the room and it squirts.
And does that still work?
Yeah, they're quite a popular thing in the house, to be honest. And it was a bit of a lockdown quirk. I was just wanting to do something, and I'd also
need to post a video on Twitter, James. That is superb.
Well, it's coming. I guess like most people during lockdown, I just found stuff to keep myself entertained. Some of it was completely stupid. There was that whole rule about washing your hands for a long enough period, and I'd catch my daughter just doing a quick wash and go, no, do the whole 20 seconds thing. And I ended up putting an Aquara water sensor inside the overflow of the sink, so that I had 2 bare wires under the plug, so I could detect water being dribbled down the plug hole. And if it didn't detect it for long enough, then I knew the hands weren't being washed, and the speakers, Sonos would say with text-to-speech that you need to wash your hands a bit better. And they were all crazy ideas. Some of them have abandoned, right? They were fun at the time, and less useful now. But the air freshener was a nice one that I rode up, and a lot of people I think have since done something similar. But for me, the whole multi-room, so every room's got Sonos right to the bathroom. And I don't know if you like me through the day with work calls. I've got a set of Bluetooth headsets that I dip in and out of, and using ESP presence, I can detect where I am on a call. So I've got my Microsoft Graph presence status, so my team status comes through to Home Assistant, and then with ESP presence, I can detect what room I'm in on a call, and I can mute my Sonos speakers as I go around the house. But equally, I can turn them on, detect a map or watch or whatever, and I unmute the speakers in the house. So you've got that concept of whole house audio. But why bother playing music in an empty room, right? So as soon as the room is empty and no longer detected presence in, then stop playing in that room. But I've got a couple of studio lights on my desk, and when my team's status detects I'm on a call, or my Bluetooth headsets are turned on, then my studio lights come on and my Sonos speakers stop playing in the room. So really nice set of automations that make that happen. And one of my friends in Germany who I work with really closely, a great chap called Brian, he loves the fact that like half a second into the call, he'll see the lights pop on and the Sonos will stop playing it, and he loves it. But stupid stuff, even again with the Aquara, and in COVID during 2020, I don't think I'd really come across Aquara before, but they just came from nowhere in some ways. But their devices were so hackable, right? I could mod them for any little project I wanted, and one of them was my key sensors. So I've put magnets on all of our keys, through car keys, through house keys, and then there's on a little back of a door, there's a set of contact sensors, and the magnet touches the contact sensor, and if your keys are back. And I only did that with that baby brain that I was going through. I was leaving the key in the front door, and you get a delivery, and they would say, "You do realise your key's in the door?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." So I created that to solve that problem. But I've put those Aquara sensors in some buttons for our puppy, and I've taught our dog Poppy to press the button when she wants to go out in the garden. Most dogs will scratch or let you know for a bark that they want to go out in the garden. if you're on calls, you just don't acknowledge that behavior. So I created these little buttons for allowing her to tell us if she wants to go out in the garden. So lots of little mods and hacks that I've done with those kind of sensors, but no single one stand out as my best DIY project. Even to things like Halloween, I used Home Assistant and ESP Home to create a really cool display for the kids on our street, where I had a smoke machine that I triggered via a remote, and we made this really interactive display. And the street didn't want kids going up to doors at the time because of COVID, so everyone did really impressive displays to come up to. And I had a little arm that would throw sweets into the road for the kids, to grab and stuff. And
it's funny you're saying that. This Halloween was probably the first year I've went a bit more. I probably went more out this Halloween because I've got 2 kids, but it was the first year I tried a bit more creative with what we did in the garden with decoration, etc. And Home Assistant was the that allowed me to do it. So the broad link was sending RF signals everywhere, to lights, to smoke sensors, to projectors. It was great. It was the first time I've ever done it, but I would have struggled probably. It was very easy. I had all this stuff lying around. I've got the broad link down from the loft covered in dust. Set all these RF devices up, and it was RF and IR, so it was great.
The nice thing about it was something I could involve my daughter on, and her ideas were really far out and radical, and some of them were completely impossible, but it allowed her imagination to grow, right? And the moment I wired up a little servo to this smoke machine, it took me back to the beginning again, where there was that interaction, right? I'm sat in a dining room wiring this thing up, and I could not stop pressing the Home Assistant button, going, "Oh, smoke! Oh, smoke!" And it was. I became a child again, and she did too. And it was. It's something I've still got wired up for the next time and the next time, right? It's phenomenal what you can do with the capabilities of the automation and Home Assistant, the flexibility and the power of ESP Home with the amount of sensors and things it's capable of connecting with, and even to my cooking hobby, right? I absolutely love cooking. I've got my meter thermometers for the barbecue and stuff, and the oven's integrated, and I created a K-type thermocoupler thermometer for the pizza oven that we've got connected to an M5 stack. Have you come across those nodes? Phenomenal range. Their flexibility is huge.
And they're tiny little things. They're really small.
Yeah, growing. I ended up with the display because I wanted it to sit underneath, and you could check it as well before you throw your pizza in. But for me, that was more about the mobility. I could be in the kitchen prepping, and I could keep an eye on the temperature, and the Sonos would just use text-to-speech every few minutes and just say what the oven temperature was and stuff. You can get, especially with the barbecue, you get flame ups and stuff that you want to go manage. But it's nice how this hobby completely integrates and overlaps so many other hobbies of mine. It's really, really fun.
Alexey, you set the bar quite high, I'm afraid. What's your best DIY project? I'm expecting something really good here.
Yeah, well, coming back to the air freshener, I have almost finished doing it. It was the prototype was working, but my wife, she's very picky, and she cannot stand any smells that are any distinctive smells, and she can get a headache from certain perfumes. So I'm afraid I had to abandon it. One thing I was always curious about, why don't they have a physical button on those air fresheners, just so you can press the button and it would work, not just on a timer, but just a button.
Yeah.
So I don't think I have even finished any of the ESP project. One that I actually did was I had the Xiaomi scales, and I did use ASP32 to listen to Bluetooth. So whenever I was stepping on the scale, I was getting the reading of my weight, and of course I knew that the weight between min and max. This is me. This is my wife, and this is someone else. And I could play a text-to-speech through the speaker in my bathroom. Say, "Oh, you weigh too much." But yeah, I don't think it is working now. One thing that actually survived, and it is working up until today, is I always wanted to have a big touch panel in my hallway. And when we've been doing the renovations, we did manage to cut a big hole in the hallway, so it was there. But when I decided to buy the actual PC to fit in it, the purpose-made one, it was something like, it was stupid. It was like €4,500 in Germany. So I decided, I could probably do it myself. So I bought, I think it was either 20 or 21 inch Asus touchscreen monitor, and I took it apart, and I managed to squeeze it inside, and I have an HDMI and a USB cable going through the wall to the other side where my rack is, so I can have. I think I repurposed an old Nuke. It wasn't the older one, the i3 Nuke. And I made a frame out of cheap plastic, which I painted white, and it looks good. It works up until today, and I have the Akara motion sensor, so it is always dark in that hallway. So whenever I'm coming downstairs, motion sensor switches on the light, and it sends like a keystroke, like someone is pressing space on this on the keyboard, so it wakes up the screen, and the screen comes up with tile boards, and I can see whoever is at the gate. And it is also coming up with it is bringing up the pop-up when someone rings the doorbell, so it's full screen video.
So does it go straight to your Home Assistant dashboard, or does it go straight to whatever the input is, i.e. the video stream from the camera?
Well, the camera, all the cameras are they're going through Home Assistant.
Okay.
And the tile board is just the alternative front end, which I could modify in the way I want. So it is working quite well.
Up until today.
Yeah. But sometimes you get Windows updates that want you to log into Microsoft account. That messes up things, but besides that,
yeah, I think certainly I'm setting a crowdfunder up tonight. Alexey's house, it needs fixed. Let's get some money.
At least 40% of all automations are broken. I don't even know they're broken. With the code, I just have time to fix it.
that tablet though is I grabbed a link. I think you posted it onto Twitter, didn't you? And often I grab a link and throw it into my to-do list as a backlog of projects when I get around to it. But I think that inspired me to put a couple of feeds in when we renovated to the hallway, where the most pass-through part of the room, because I'd love a screen that is more for prompts, right? Again, it comes back to that whole memory thing and brain. Just to go today, you've got this on, or you need to do these chores or whatever, and just to have a screen that you pass through.
Yeah.
My cookbook is in GitHub, so all of my recipes that I cook with sits in a repo there, and I've done a load of automation in GitHub to create a meal planner. So I've got the next 10 days ahead. We have columns for, and I just drag my recipes onto the Kanban board in GitHub. But all of that flows down to Home Assistant, so you can look at a card in Home Assistant and you know what's on for dinner tonight. And so I have my daughter half the week, and food's a big part of our little thing. We bake together, and every time I pick her up from school, there's the excitement of what's for dinner, Daddy, and she'll know it's one of her favorite meals, right? So I tagged them in GitHub with different labels, different types of food that the recipe has, but I'll mark them if my partner or Florence like them. And when the nights she stays, I always pick one of her favorites so that she's got something to look forward to. But that screen would be great for that.
It's something I spoke about in other episodes. It's something I've never got into doing it. I really want it. I love the idea of the screen on the wall. I've not done it because I'm worried that if I do it and I do it wrong, it breaks the dream of what I want it to be. So I still, at some point in time, I will have a screen on the wall, but it will be flush. It won't be sticking out from the wall. It will look as part of the house one day. But back to your point, James, around kind of having the calendar recently. I recently had my brother-in-law set up Dartboard. So doesn't have Home Assistant. Let me just pick that up, actually. He's not a Home Assistant user, but he wanted something to have the kind of Google Calendar up and all the chores and all that. Dartboard, and all we did was we bought a monitor, we stripped it out, we put it into a thick white bordered. I've lost my words. Thick white bordered wooden frame. That's the word. And it just pulls straight from Google Calendar, and it's a crack. I mean, Dartboard's really good. If anybody's never used Dartboard before, really so simple to use. Runs off a Raspberry Pi, and did the job. But for me, it's still not quite what I'm wanting to get to. So the dream of a screen on the wall hasn't been conquered just yet.
I think if current form is anything to go on, I think there's going to be a lot of progress with the Google Calendar integration. So last release, there was some cool stuff with the triggers. And this release, there's continuation of that where you've got offsets now. So you can say, right, 2 hours before this event, trigger the automation. But it seems like that's getting some TLC. I would love not to use Google. All my calendars are in Outlook, and I then pass the iCal feed over to Google to flow down to Home Assistant. Right, it's an unnecessary hop, and I don't like Google having the data. But it is what it is. Hopefully, I should get around to exploring like an Office 365 or an Outlook integration to grab my calendars directly. But calendar, to do, and chores. So all around the house, all of our chores are automated in the reminder of them, not the actual doing of them. Sadly, I'd love that too. But just basic stuff like taking the trash out and changing the bedding, hoovering, deep cleaning out the fridges and stuff. They've all got their cycles, and I get an automation trigger, a notification, and a bit of a nudge and a reminder to do them. But I've got a tablet that sits on a dock in the kitchen, a Lenovo Android thing, and it's the step towards the wall one. But until I put some effort aside into polishing it and sorting out my Lovelace dashboard and stuff, it can live in the dock for now.
By the way, James, there is an iCal integration in Home Assistant. I'm using it with iCloud calendars. It does work, but it has some issues with recurring events.
Got it. No, I use a lot of... So I think one of the reasons when I explored that was reoccurring, but also one of the really nice things about the Google Calendar integration is the ability to create additional calendars on top of calendars. Mm-hmm. So using the search string, you can create a dedicated calendar just for that particular event. And I drive a lot of automation from my calendars for the house when things are due, chores and things coming on, through to picking up my daughter. I have a calendar dedicated to her, and I'll put her events in the calendar. And this is where it gets really crazy. It looks at where I am located, using the Waze integration to look at the time from where I am to that event. Then it looks at my car and goes, right, have you got enough mileage to get you there? Because sometimes you don't have enough fuel in the car, right? and then I'll add my little 5. I'd rather be an hour early than a minute late, so I add a bit more of buffer space for that. If I need fuel, it adds a bit more time to do that.
This is
And then
genius.
when I'm on my calls or whatever, I know that I can transfer my call to my headset, and the flexibility we have with work is phenomenal. But it just gives me that space to manage my work and personal life a bit better. And Florence goes to quite a lot of clubs all over the place sometimes, and I just can't keep up with the routine sometimes. So the calendar is my source of destiny, really, and the automations help me along a bit further.
If you're listening to this or watching this, you need to get following James. The automations and creations are mind blowing. Like
The use
next
cases,
level, James.
yeah.
Well done, mate. Well done.
Well, like I said to me earlier before the stream, every single time I'm thinking, okay, I have an idea for a very cool automation, and I do it. I post it on Twitter, and then James comes in and said, "Oh, yeah, I've done something similar," and just looking at his automation, and with every single line you're reading, it's like, oh, he's also checking for this sensor and this thing and that thing, and
Brilliant.
I will never be as clever as he is.
You're the template master, though. I think the same when I started following you. Your stuff was phenomenal, and the templates you write are of another level, right?
No. Well, actually, one automation that I have recently made that actually works and works quite well, although it is, I have an old Android phone, which is running Tasca, and it has a couple of apps installed. It has an app for my home alarm, because it doesn't have any integration with anything. And it has Uber Eats, Amazon, well, something else. So for all those apps, it is sending an event to Home Assistant for all the notifications that you're receiving from those apps. And I'm able to pass all those notifications within Home Assistant and do something. So for my home alarm, I'm able to trigger input booleans for, if the alarm is set or unset. And for Uber Eats, I have an automation that is sending a text-to-speech whenever the restaurant started cooking the meal, and then whenever someone is on the way. And you always get a very precise notification when someone is just a few minutes away. So it sends another text-to-speech saying, the driver is nearby, and it's automatically opening the gate for the driver.
Smart.
And once the order is complete, it says, well, I hope you enjoy your meal, and it closes the gate in 30 seconds. So you have to do absolutely nothing but just sit down and eat.
And there was me thinking my lights coming on at night time after a certain hour was clever.
I want to know, though, how we should have a look actually on Home Assistant analytics, how popular the Domino's integration is, right? I installed it for one Twitter video, which was when we had our kitchen installed. The hob has a button on it that you can press that it sends an IR signal to the hood above to turn on, except our kitchen design didn't allow us to put that hood in, so it's a pointless button. And I thought, right, it's just shouting at me to integrate with ESP Home. So I got an ESP node with an IR sensor. I sniffed out the button press, and I pressed it, and I had the Domino's integration order pizza. And I just thought, right, that's done with now. I'll remove that and never use it again.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Right. Last section is I'm always told is the favourite section for a lot of people, and it's the mystery question section. So, James, I'll come to you first. All right. Think on your feet. Be prepared. These questions are all quite off the wall. So, given this has been a non-YouTube interview episode, I thought let's just bash some YouTube influencers or YouTube channel people. Bearded Tinker. All right.
Yep.
So your question, James, is why actually you're the true bearded tinker and BT is the imposter. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Just tell us why you're the true one and BT and his channel is an imposter.
He's no imposter. I'm having lunch with that master. At the end of the month, hopefully, I'm off to Zagreb. I messaged him and said, "Let's do lunch." Why am I the master? With the real bearded one. This is growing on me, you know. I've not touched it in 6 weeks. If we are really talking about the beard, that is. And I think it's going to stay. But you might have to run that one past me again, Lee, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think you dodged answering that one. If I'm honest, I think given you're going to meet the good man BT for lunch. Right, Alexey, on to you. Same approach of let's bash somebody. So Lewis over at Everything Smart Home. All right. Lewis loves being called an influencer, doesn't he?
We can sell products, that's for sure. Especially those sensors in yesterday's video.
That's it. So, Alexey, in about 30 seconds, can you tell me why Lewis is the best person to influence everybody as to why you should eat haggis and wear a kilt? Stereotypes included. On you go.
Well, he has big arms. So do you.
Kilt on your legs, by the way, not on your arms.
It's a
What charm are you talking about?
It's a difficult one. I think he has something going on, in his background, because all these ambient lights, they do something to your psyche. It's like, go buy it, go do it. Just something about the lights.
Something about the lights. I'll take that as the answer. So, Lewis, your lights are a hypnotic, subliminal message. Yeah, brilliant. Guys, thank you very, very much. Phil enjoyed it. I know it's been in the cards for a while, and for the listeners, I messaged James back in February 2021 to say, do you want to come on the show? And it's only taken a year and 4 months. So we're finally here. But guys, thank you both very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure and really enjoyed learning about your smart home stuff. Anything you want to give a plug or a shout out before we wrap up?
Just the community, right? What you guys do. Keep doing it, right? It fuels us with great ideas and entertainment for sure. But I think what we do is fueled by people like Alex and yourself posting content, sharing stuff, and we all learn from one another. So thanks for everything everyone does, and keep it up.
Brilliant.
Just as James said, this is probably the friendliest community I have ever been part of, and there is always something new, and we just keep evolving, and the home system keeps evolving. And so,
do you know? I'll stick on that point. Actually, that's a good shout. I don't think the community gets enough praise at times. I don't know. It's just home system or smart home in general. People seem genuinely interested to help out, and yes, you'll get the odd person that will grill you because they're a newbie or whatever. But I think for the most part, 99% of the time, it's a fantastic place to reach out for help. People will come in and give their time and effort to help you. And if you go through loads of other Reddit, people know how bad Reddit can be in other forums and ecosystems, etc. But I think the smart home space, we're very lucky that it's full of good people that genuinely want to help out and share knowledge and education.
I couldn't agree more.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you very much, and everybody enjoy the show. Cheers.
Thank you.